Okay, hi. I'm Meaghan Burnes, a junior at the George Washington University and an intern and junior board member at Girl Security. And today I have Kyla Guru and Alexis Visser here with me for a quick discussion in light of the recent election. So I'll have them introduce themselves. Kyla, you can begin.
Hi everyone, I'm Kyla. I'm a freshman at Stanford University. I'm also an intern and a junior board member at Girl Security and the founder and CEO of Bits and Bytes Cybersecurity Education.
Hi, I'm Alexis Visser. I'm a junior at Ohio State University in Columbus, Ohio. I am a Girl Security scholar and I am an Army Reservist in, let's get started.
All right, thank you both. So our first discussion question, we're going to start with Alexis. Why is now the most important time to demonstrate your patriotism, and how can we create an environment where one's sense of patriotism is not associated with their political ideologies?
Yeah, I think this is one of my favorite questions. I think I'm going to start with the second half of the question first, because that seems what I got going. I think it's important to say that you're not a patriot just because you align yourself with a certain political party. You're a patriot and you show patriotism by, being critical of your country, even while showing love at the same time. And that doesn't really have to do with like your political stance, whether you're a Democrat, Republican, Independent. I think it's important to note that just because you side with one another, that doesn't instantly make you a patriot. And being critical doesn't also make you anti-American either, because, that's what I like, what I love most about America is that we're allowed to demand more from our country. We're allowed to demand more from our government. And the election is the time to do that, And that leads me to the first point is, that's the most important time to demonstrate your demands from the government is to vote. Vote not only for presidents, but for senators, for congressmen, for issues in your state, which was important for Ohio this year. And I think I was always told by my grandma that starting from local government elections and working way up was the best way to demonstrate patriotism in America, because that's where it all begins from her perspective. So I think it's important to understand that.
Yeah, I really like that. And to go off of that, I think it's so important that we use our patriotism as a tool to bind our nation together rather than as something that will further divide us, because we all are fighting for the same thing, which is a strong, resilient nation that we're proud to live in. And so I think that as Americans, we have to utilize this common thread to mend the division, and also to remember that our voice isn't silenced if our party, whether it be local, state, or the federal government, isn't the one in power. So yeah, Kyla, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I love both of your perspectives. I love the idea that you can still love your country and still criticize it. I think that's so important and key to our democracy and the resilience of it. And I think for this question too, I kind of want to focus on like what would happen if we didn't have patriotism in this time. And I think like cyber perspective, the more divisiveness that we experience internally, the less that we believe in our systems of democracy, and the more we believe that they're broken, there's more area that we leave for vulnerability in our country's national security and in our cybersecurity too. I think a lot of this comes from perception hacking. For instance, like the more confused or the more angry you are and the emotions that you have, the more distracted you might be online and the more malicious links that you might click. And it's the little things like that. And the more susceptible you are to disinformation and fringe beliefs. And I think that just underscores the point that like right now, more than ever, like we must remain like vigilant on top of everything. And we must remain adamant that, that in this idea that as a country, we're still a work in progress, but we are resilient. And as Meaghan, you said, we're a democracy, we are resilient, our vote and our voice matters right now.
Yeah, that's great. And you tied us in very well with our next question, which is, what are some ways that we can protect ourselves from any disinformation and misinformation surrounding the election and its results? So, Kyla, I'll let you begin with this question.
Yeah, thank you, Meaghan. And I think this is also such a critical question right now, because I think much more than the 2016 election, the 2020 election has been a lot of emphasis on voter education and civic education and getting voters empowered. And a part of that empowerment comes from feeling like your nation.
Okay, maybe Alexis, do you want to go?
Yeah, I'll go. I love what Kyla was starting to say before the interview. But I really wanted to hear a perspective on this because from like the cyber aspect, I think it's really important, especially today. From my limited perspective, I actually, I started to learn a lot more of how to protect yourself from disinformation and misinformation. When Girl Security came out with their disinfo project, combating disinformation, and I think they had a lot of good resources for that. What I got out from that was, make sure you analyze information. When you see, an article or a tweet or an Instagram post, is it obvious? I always like to see, is there an obvious intended audience? Like, are they targeting a specific audience, and what is their intention in doing that? What evidence supports the claim they have? Is there more than one source, spreading the information, and how can you, back that up? And, I always like to check, sources, especially when it comes to like social media posts on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook with reliable news sources. And the one thing that everybody says, check your reliable news sources. Well, maybe some reliable news sources is different to others. And I don't think, some news sources can still be, unfortunately, targets of disinformation as well. And not only just reliable news sources that you believe are reliable, but fact-checking with sources outside of that bubble that are also, considered to be credible, I think is important too, because sometimes they can get lost in that. And also when it comes to elections specifically, check with your state. This was more so in the beginning of voting, but like check with your state to see how they were handling voter registration, the election, now election results. That's a big one right now. See what your state is doing, what they've put out so far on, how they counted the results, if that is something that you're interested in. I think it's really important to do so. But I think the first step is definitely like analyzing where you're getting your information from. You can't take everything at face value because unfortunately, disinformation is there, and it's, has malicious intent, and it targets audiences, especially women and young girls, people of color, people of all of these marginalized groups, and it's important to take the steps to prevent yourself from being attacked like that.
Yeah, I think that was really well said. I think it's so important to emphasize that you need to fact check everything before you screenshot and distribute or repost anything. And especially if you see a post that evokes any type of emotional response, causing you to want to repost it, those are the most important ones to fact check, because we know that bad actors their strategy is to take advantage of the viewers' passion and emotion to get them to repost and spread the disinformation. It's also important to educate. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to add a little bit there. And I think just working off of what Alexis has been wonderfully and eloquently saying, I think like attackers right now, and I'm not sure how much of this has already been said because my Wi-Fi was a little wonky, but I think attackers really want us to perceive that our election is not protected, and they're going to do anything they can to do that. Like, for instance, I think right now we're seeing a lot of these kinds of like perception hacks when there's a small case of a website getting defaced or a more of a cyber nuisance, but it's blown out of proportion in a way that like makes us feel like our election is not, the integrity is compromised or something like that. So I think right now, rumor control is definitely important. CISA, I think, has been doing a lot of that, like real-time, frequent, and pushing out frequent information that is that's verifying information or debunking things. And also, like Twitter has put up some really interesting things around disinformation, including like if you try and retweet a post that contains an article, it'll encourage you and ask you if you have read the article before you retweet it, which I think is just like so basic, but also so key, that like second time to rethink, as you said, Meaghan, and like check your emotions and see if you can read the article and parse through it one more time. And then the other thing that they've been doing is marking context where context is needed around different posts. So if a post says something that might be like misinformation, but they're not really sure that they should take it down, they'll put context around it. And so definitely always read that context and click on that little like eye with a circle that gives you more information about it. I think in general, like right now, we just have to remind ourselves that like for every one bad actor that's on these platforms, the few of them that are there, like we can rise up in the thousands and speak our truth to power by reporting the disinformation that we see when we see it and where we see it.
Yes, thank you, Kyla. That was great. Yeah, super important that we all understand and educate ourselves on disinformation and why it exists, and why it's targeting our country. So yeah, moving on to the very last question. This is $1 million question that we're all trying to find the answer to. How can we, as women aiming to secure the nation in a male-dominated field, stand up for ourselves in a country where support towards the government is so divided? So I'm very passionate about this issue. So the way I see it is that we have to stand by our beliefs and continue to advocate for them in a very respectful and assertive manner. And it's essential to ensure that our voice is heard loud and clear, and to remind yourself every day what you're working towards and what you're here for. For example, I remind myself daily that my mission is to ensure that those sacrificing their lives for our country do not do so in vain. And I live with this in mind, and it gives me the confidence and resiliency to stand tall behind all the work that I do, and no matter how criticized or accepted it might be. And I think it's so important to remember that confidence is what will be our key to success as women in this field, and especially the ability to train your mind to turn criticism and defeat into drive and grit. As we all can attest to this, initially it's very uncomfortable to be the only woman in a room, and most of the time the only person under the age of like 30. But if you take that discomfort and you don't let it intimidate you, you take it as an opportunity, you'll learn to embrace it, to embrace the discomfort and kind of get comfortable with it. And that's how I think personally that we're going to demonstrate our value to the world. I believe it really all comes from your mindset. And I think as a woman, like I said, a woman in this field that's basically male dominated, I think it's just really important to keep all of that in mind. So Alexis, do you want to speak on this question?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I love this question too. My first bullet, you already said it, was, standing together and standing by your beliefs. And while standing together, I think, especially as women, it's important to realize that all women also struggle differently, especially when women of color, LGBTQ women. And I think it's important while we stand together that we stand with them, with those struggles in mind for the different, women of our community. And I think you also can't be afraid to be heard, because especially me growing up and kind of always wanting to do something with, national security, being in the military, it's easy to be afraid to speak up. And I think you can't let that fear, defeat you. You have to have your voice heard, because it matters. It does, because you're speaking for everyone around you that couldn't before. And I think that really matters. I think engaging in discourse with others that, might not agree with you is important too, especially in the divided world we live in right now. It's hard. It's not easy. It's not easy to go out of your comfort zone, but I think it's important just to see, how, beyond face value, why it is what they believe they do. And yeah, you said it best, like, especially in a male-dominated community, it's so easy to try and get lost in the fear of, being the only woman in the room, being the youngest woman in the room. And I think that takes me to a point that I think is more important, especially now, is that young women, their voices matter too. They might not, they might not be old enough to vote. They might not be old enough to do, have a career yet, but their voice matters too, because they're citizens of this country as well. I think it's easy kind of to get lost in that. They're young, they don't know what they want, but their voice matters too. And I think it's a really good thing, especially with all these organizations, especially Girl Security, lifting the young women's voices up. It really matters so much. Yeah.
Thank you, Alexis. That was so good. I could not have said that better myself. Kyla, do you have any input on this?
Yeah, definitely. I think, what was said was amazing. I think that's definitely, we should keep in mind that our voices are so powerful, and that's going to carry us forward. I think too, just to add off of both of you guys, one of the biggest things is to remember where all of this comes from, the fact that in order to get to this point where women can vote, where we can have a voice, where we can use these channels to amplify our beliefs, there was so much struggle and so much toil to get here from some of our feminist icons and from some of the women leaders who fought for our rights like that. So I think right now it's a privilege and a right for us to amplify that in ways that have, are so powerful. And I think, to Alexis's point, as Gen Z too, we're so familiar with these social media channels where we have the ability to amplify these messages to new communities and to maybe have a voice for those who are not on the same platforms or can't be for those reasons. And so I think that's so important. And then to Meaghan's point, I do believe that it starts internally. So starting with educating yourself, defining for yourself what your values are, what your non-negotiables are, and then figure out what that represents for you outward to the community. So, and when you do that, when you do come out to the community, know that there is a community that is here for you, to listen to you. Like the sisterhood that we have at Girl Security, know that it's one that you can take the space that you need, but it's one that also encourages you to make space for others and make space for those that have different perspectives. So as you grow and learn and develop your beliefs, know that you have a community of other young women there for you as you're realizing the power in your voice. So,
Yeah, that was great, Kyla. Shout out to Girl Security for instilling this confidence in all of us. With that very powerful ending, I want to thank you both for your time and for sharing your perspective on these matters. It's a really important conversation to have, as we all know, and of course it's even more important to continue to engage in this. So this is just the beginning of this conversation. So thank you both again, and I look forward to continuing this discussion throughout our journeys.
Thank you so much, Meaghan, for hosting this. Take care, everyone.
Bye.